Something interesting has been happening, and it's a little different than what you might be hearing. People aren't just moving to Florida anymore, they're slowing down, comparing cities and letting the idea sit a little longer. And then Tampa pops up. It's not the option they thought they were gonna love. Honestly, it was probably overlooked at first, but the more they look at it, the more it starts to make sense. This doesn't feel like the rush we saw a few years ago. Nobody's panic buying. Nobody's chasing the hottest headline city anymore. The conversations feel more intentional now. People are asking better questions. What does day-to-day life actually feel like? What still works 5 years from now? What city gives me options instead of locking me into one lifestyle? And that's where Tampa keeps getting chosen. Quietly, repeatedly, often by people who looked at other Florida cities first, but realized Tampa offers a balance that's hard to explain until you've spent some real time here. That's what I want to talk to you about. Why Tampa keeps getting chosen this way, not as an impulse, but as a decision. And why, right now, and more than ever, Tampa feels very different than the rest of Florida. For a long time, Tampa was easy to underestimate. It was seen as laid back and often flew under the radar. A good place to visit, a decent place to live, but not really part of the bigger Florida conversation. Most people remembered flying into the airport and heading straight to the beaches. They couldn't really tell you much about actual Tampa, but what Tampa has quietly done over the last several years is grow up. Not in a flashy, overnight kind of way, more like layer by layer. The city didn't reinvent itself, it expanded, it added depth. New neighborhoods, new industries, more walkable pockets, more happening outside of the usual spots. Tampa stopped being just one place and started functioning as a real connected metro. And that shift matters because it changes how the city feels to live in. Tampa today isn't trying to be Miami. It's not trying to be Orlando. It's becoming its own thing. A city with momentum, but also structure. A place that still feels approachable, but clearly isn't stuck anymore. And once people realize they're not looking at the old version of Tampa, the conversation starts to change for them. You know where I've always thought Tampa truly separates itself, and it's something a lot of people don't fully appreciate until they see it laid out for them? Tampa works as the perfect Florida hub, and honestly, a damn good one at that, but not just geographically, but practically. When you look at the map, it starts to click. You're central, you're not locked into one corner of the state. Orlando, it's an easy drive. Sarasota, it's right there. St. Pete and the Gulf beaches are just minutes away. Even crossing the state doesn't feel like a commitment. You can live your life in Tampa and still access a lot of Florida without having to constantly uproot yourself. And it's not just about driving. Tampa gives you options in how you move in and out of your everyday routine. You've got an international airport that's just easy to use and probably a top airport in the country. And surprisingly, it's well connected. You can get almost anywhere without it turning into a full day ordeal. Then you've got the cruise port sitting right there, which means quick getaways don't require a ton of planning your life around them. That kind of access matters more than people think, especially once it gets busy. What really makes Tampa different is that you don't have to choose one version of Florida and commit to it forever. You can enjoy the bay, you can be out on the Gulf, you can be downtown one night and somewhere quiet with space the next. You can even push just outside the city and find acreage and a slower pace without feeling disconnected from everything else. Tampa gives you range, and range creates flexibility. That's the hub effect. It lets people live one life while still having access to many others. And that's a big reason Tampa keeps staying in the conversation when people really start thinking things through. For those of you comparing cities right now, drop a comment and let me know what else is on your list. A lot of the questions get started right there. And if Tampa's on your radar, my contact info is below. My real estate team would love to be your resource for you as you're figuring things out. One of the reasons Tampa works for so many different people is that it doesn't force you into one version of life. You don't have to pick a lane on day one and stay there forever. The city gives you room to move, and that shows up in how people actually live here. You could be near the water and still have a normal routine. Not everything revolves around the bay, but it's there when you want it. You could live closer to the city and still have neighborhoods that feel settled and livable, or you could push out just a little bit outside of Tampa and find space, quiet, even acreage without feeling like you're disconnected from everything that matters. What's interesting is how often people mix and match those lifestyles. Downtown one night, a quiet backyard the next, boating on the weekend with friends, a short commute to a nearby city during the week. Tampa makes that kind of balance possible without turning everyday life into a constant trade-off. And that flexibility matters more than people expect, especially once the move stops being an idea and starts being your real life. Tampa gives people options, and options, that creates comfort. That's a big reason why it doesn't just attract people, it keeps them here. This next one is the part people usually don't think about at first, but it ends up mattering the most: day-to-day life. Not the weekends, not the highlight reel, just the rhythm of a normal week. Tampa works because it's livable in a very practical way. Most people don't live their lives bouncing all over the map every day. They stay within a pretty tight radius: work, school, gym, groceries, a few favorite spots. In Tampa, creating that lifestyle radius tends to make sense. You don't want to spend your entire day in the car, and you don't want to constantly plan your life around traffic or distance. Another big piece of it is that Tampa doesn't rely on one single center for everything. There isn't just one spot that carries the weight of the entire city. Different parts of Tampa serve different purposes, whether that's downtown, South Tampa, West Shore, areas just outside the city where people actually live their day-to-day lives. Different areas have their own energy and purpose, which spreads things out and keeps everyday life from feeling overwhelming. You can have access to what you need without everything being stacked on top of itself. That balance shows up in the way people settle in here. Life feels manageable. You can build routines. You can actually enjoy where you live instead of constantly navigating it. And when a city starts to feel easy to live in, not just exciting to visit, that usually tells you a lot. So what's interesting about Tampa right now is that it doesn't feel like it's trying to become something else. See, a lot of cities go through phases where they chase an identity. Tampa feels past that point. The focus now is refinement, taking what already works and making it better. You can see it in how the city is investing in itself. You see it in the way downtown has been filling in the expansion of major medical and cultural institutions, and in infrastructure projects that are already underway, not just talked about. More attention being paid to how people actually move through the city and use it day to day. And some say it's not coming together fast enough, while others feel it's being rushed. Regardless, I still think it feels intentional. And that matters because growth looks very different when it's planned versus when it's reactive. Tampa isn't trying to grab extra attention or reinvent the wheel. It's sharpening what's already there, and that tends to create a city that feels more stable over time, not just exciting right there in the moment. For people thinking a few years ahead, that kind of trajectory carries a lot of weight. It's not about predicting what Tampa will be, it's about recognizing what it's already becoming and how comfortable that feels if you're planning to stay for a while. No city works for everyone, and Tampa is no exception. Part of what makes it a good fit for so many people is understanding what it doesn't try to be. Tampa isn't the cheapest place in Florida, and it's not the flashiest either. If you're looking for nonstop energy or a city that's constantly trying to impress, there are other places that do a better job. Growth here comes with trade-offs too. Traffic exists. Summers are real. Anyone who's sat on the Howard Franklin or Dale Mabry at the wrong time knows exactly what I mean. But as more people move in, some things feel busier than they used to. That's just part of the deal. Tampa hasn't avoided growth, it's just absorbed it differently than some of the other cities. But for a lot of people, those trade-offs feel reasonable. The city still functions, life still feels manageable, you're not constantly fighting your environment just to get through the day. And that balance, the willingness to accept a few compromises in exchange for a city that actually works, is what keeps Tampa appealing long after the excitement fades. What's interesting about the people choosing Tampa right now is how intentional they are. These aren't impulse moves. Most of the time, Tampa isn't the first place they even looked at. It's the city they circled back to after looking at places like Miami, Orlando, or South Florida and realizing those options come with trade-offs they don't want long-term. See, a lot of them are thinking long-term. They want a place that works for different stages of life, not just right now. They're looking for a city that can handle change, a job shift, a growing family, a different pace a few years down the road. Tampa tends to check those boxes in a way that feels steady instead of speculative. You see it with people who work remotely but still want infrastructure around them. Families who want lifestyle and practicality in the same place. Buyers who don't want to move twice because they just chased the wrong fit the first time. Tampa seems to resonate with people who value flexibility and longevity over flash, and that's why it keeps showing up at the end of this list. Not because it promises everything, but because it leaves room for what life might look like next. If you're in the middle of comparing cities, the hardest part usually isn't narrowing the list, it's figuring out what actually matters when to strip just away all the noise. Rankings, social media clips, highlight reels, all of that fades pretty quickly when you start picturing your real life. A better question than which city is the best is which city still works once things settle in. When the move isn't new anymore, when routines take over, things like how easy is it to get around, how many parts of the city you actually use, and how often you feel boxed in start to matter a lot more. When your priorities shift a little, things like how easy is it to get around, how many parts of the city you actually use, and how often you feel boxed in start to matter a lot more. When your priorities shift a little, things like how easy is it to get around, how many parts of the city you actually use, and how often you feel boxed in start to matter a lot more. When your priorities shift a little, that's where places start to separate themselves. Tampa tends to make sense when you look at it that way, not because it wins every category, but because it doesn't force extreme trade-offs. It gives you access without overload, options without chaos, a city that can support different versions of life as they change over time. So if Tampa's on your list, it's worth asking whether it fits how you actually live, not just how it looks on paper. For a lot of people, that's where the decision starts to feel clearer. Now, if you've made it this far, you're probably not just watching out of curiosity, you're thinking through something, comparing options, trying to figure out which place actually fits your life once the move isn't new anymore. And at some point, every decision like this stops being about the idea of a city and starts being about how it actually works day to day, specific to the lifestyle you really want. When you look at it that way, the list usually gets shorter. And that's where Tampa keeps showing up. Tampa isn't trying to be the biggest and baddest city in Florida. It doesn't need to be. What it offers is connection, access, flexibility, a place that lets you live one life while still keeping a lot of doors open for future stages of life. For people thinking a few steps ahead, that ends up mattering more than hype ever could. If Tampa's on your radar and you want to keep digging into how it really works, I've got an entire playlist that breaks this down even further. Neighborhoods, suburbs, what people get right and what they get wrong when they move here. That's the best place to continue if you're still figuring things out. And if you're at the point where you want guidance on what a move to Tampa could look like for you, my contact info is below. My real estate team and I help people navigate this every day, and we're always happy to be your local Tampa resource. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. Woo!